We have a quorum, so I would like to start this morning's work. First, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat for housekeeping announcement. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, delegates. There is one housekeeping announcement for today. All in-session documents are published on the CITES website, except for the Spanish version of the document coming out of the Budget and Finance Working Group, which should be up before noon today. So if you want to consult, and you should consult the in-session documents, they're all published on the CITES website under the CoP20 item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. So we also have some docs to work with. We have COM3, COM4, and COM5. So on Boswellia, on Pau Brasilia, and on what I asked parties to consider last night. I will take them up after lunch at 2 o'clock, so the docs will be discussed after lunch. Also a summary record, the summary record 11, will also be discussed after lunch. So we have still 11 proposals to go through. That's my intention to go through them this morning. So I would like to immediately start with the first proposal to look at. It is COP20 Prop 11 on Coloepus didactylus and Coloepus hoffmanni. It has been submitted by Brazil, Costa Rica, and Panama. It's to include these two species in Appendix 2. I see Brazil has asked for the floor, so Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Sloths are a remarkable and ancient lineage, found only in Central and South America, co-endemic to our region. Their lives unfold slowly. Females give birth just one offspring every 2 to 3 years, making each new life precious. Today, these gentle animals face mounting pressures, habitat loss, forest fires, and increasing trade. Recent trade and scientific studies reveal a sharp rise in demand for Coloepus hoffmanni and Coloepus didactylus. Yet, the true scale is even greater, as many transactions involving non-CITES specimens remains unrecorded. The illegal trade, in particular, is devastating. Thousands of babies and juveniles are torn from the wild, targeting the very age groups essential for the future of their populations. Combined with accelerating habitat loss, this pressure makes natural recovery ever more fragile. Compounding crisis, sloths do not thrive in captivity. Their specialized needs make ex situ conservation and reintroduction extremely challenging, and no dedicated breeding centers exist to support long-term population recovery. As we extensively explain in the COP20 InfoDoc 47, those species are indeed threatened by international trade. Thus, regulating trade is no longer simply advisable. It is essential for ensuring these species do not slip further towards irreversible decline. So, oriented by precautionary principle, Brazil, together with Costa Rica and Panama, countries of origin, calls for your support to list both two-toed sloth species in Appendix 2. The two species are so similar in appearance that even experts require genetic analysis for accurate identification. Therefore, we propose including Coloepus didactylus as a look-alike species, ensuring that the enforcement is effective and that both species receive the protection they urgently need. Finally, I would like just to make a clarification that after revising our proposal, we need a correction so that we need to clearly state that Bahamas is not one of the main importers of the sloth. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this clarification and introduction of the proposal. I now open the floor to parties for their comments. Parties, you have the floor. I see Sudan.
Thank you, Chair. Sudan fully supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia, como país de distribución de estas especies y en nombre de la región de América Central y del Caribe presentes aquí, Guatemala, Argentina, República Dominicana, Chile, Uruguay, Honduras y Ecuador, y de conformidad con el artículo 2A de la Convención, así como para la inclusión en los apéndices en el anexo 2B de la Convención, quiere instar a las partes a apoyar esta propuesta. En la región hemos observado un creciente tráfico de perezosos impulsado por la demanda internacional de mascotas y animales para exhibición. La mayoría de estos animales provienen del medio silvestre y las modalidades de captura, especialmente de crías, generan altos niveles de mortalidad y afectan directamente a las poblaciones silvestres. La falta de inclusión en CITES ha dejado un vacío que facilita el movimiento transfronterizo sin trazabilidad, debilitando los esfuerzos de control y aumentando la presión sobre las especies de perezosos. Estas especies tienen baja tasa reproductiva y rasgos de movilidad lenta, además de ser especies amenazadas. Otras amenazas como la pérdida de hábitat pueden estar relacionadas con la extracción para el tráfico ilegal, haciendo que la inclusión en el apéndice 2 sea una medida preventiva necesaria para fortalecer la cooperación entre autoridades para su control. Las partes mencionadas en esta región consideran que esta propuesta responde a una problemática emergente en la región, por lo que invitamos respetuosamente a las partes a apoyarla. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Colombia. I have Nigeria.
Thank you, Chair. Based on the biological criteria and the trend in trade for this species, Nigeria supports the inclusion of this species in the Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Bahrain.
Bahrain supports the proposal to include this species as an important step to regulate trade and reduce illegal trafficking that threaten these species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bahrain. El Salvador.
Gracias, señor presidente. El Salvador apoya la propuesta.
Thank you. Burkina Faso.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Et le Burkina Faso appuie cette proposition. Merci.
I see the Syrian Arab Republic.
Thank you, Chair. Syria supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to align with all the others support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports this proposal based on the best available biological and trade data. Species in the genus Colipus are inherently vulnerable to harvest due to low reproductive rates, slow growth, and high maternal investment in offspring. Demand for sloths is increasing, and because captive breeding is difficult, the demand is largely met through wild-caught individuals. Analysis of the U.S. Law Enforcement Management Information System data shows reported trade in live, wild-caught Colipus didactylus is imported at a high volume of trade into the U.S. for commercial purposes. Although the full scale of international trade is unknown, U.S. import data suggests that these species may be widely traded in other countries, particularly those with large pet markets. While the proponents note that Colipus didactylus qualifies as a lookalike species, evidence indicates it also meets the criteria in Annex 2A, Criterion B of Resolution Comp 9.24, Rev Cop 17. Inclusion in Appendix 2 would enable accurate data collection on international trade and promote legal, sustainable, and traceable practices, reducing illegal trafficking and overexploitation. Given the species' vulnerability to unregulated harvest and illegal trade throughout its range, listing in Appendix 2 is warranted to ensure that any trade is legal and non-detrimental. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Zambia.
Good morning, Chair. Zambia supports the proposal to list the sloth into Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada recognizes this species as widely distributed and listed as least concern. We also note that the data, as noted by the United States, suggests that trade is a pressure on this inherently vulnerable species, and we further note the strong support from the range countries. For these reasons, like all other speakers who have spoken thus far, Canada supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I see Japan.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Japan would like to express its appreciation to the proponents for preparing this proposal, which demonstrates their strong commitment to conserve these species. Japan will not block consensus. However, at this stage, Japan is not in a position to support the proposal for the following reasons. First, the Hoffman's two-toed sloth is assessed at least concern on the IUCN Red List, and its population is considered relatively abundant, indicating that the species does not meet the biological criteria for Appendix 2 listing. Second, the greatest threat to sloth species is habitat loss, and there is insufficient scientific evidence to conclude that international trade has a significant impact on the survival of this species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Japan. I have Costa Rica.
Gracias, señor presidente. Como es la primera vez que Costa Rica interviene, queremos agradecer al gobierno de Uzbekistán por ser anfitriones de esta COP y a usted, señor presidente, por la conducción de este comité. El perezoso de dos dedos, Coleopus hoffmanni, es una especie nativa de Costa Rica. Se distribuye ampliamente desde las tierras bajas hasta las selvas montañosas, incluyendo bosques húmedos, bosques de galería y bosques secundarios, así como plantaciones. La especie Coleoptudus didactylus no se encuentra en Costa Rica, sin embargo son especies con una gran similitud, a menudo solo identificables por pruebas de ADN. El aumento de las capturas ilegales para el comercio internacional como mascotas exóticas en zoológicos y comercio turístico está afectando a las poblaciones silvestres. Se calcula que entre el 80 y 90% de los perezosos víctimas de tráfico mueren en el proceso. Costa Rica fue notificada de la alerta púrpura de Interpol número 903 del 2019, en la cual se advierte el modus operandi del tráfico de perezosos por vía terrestre, males de las especies de 2 y 3 dedos que eran embaladas en cajas de cartón. Se indica que los traficantes consiguen ejemplares y los transportan provenientes de regiones de Centroamérica y Sudamérica, ingresándolos por vía terrestre de manera legal para poder llegar a puntos donde se puedan realizar envíos por paquetería terrestre o aérea. Los ejemplares llegan a ser ofertados y comercializados mediante el uso de grupos de venta y comercio de fauna silvestre en línea, donde se dice que los ejemplares fueron nacidos en cautiverio y cuentan con toda una documentación en regla. Sin embargo, no se ha comprobado ningún establecimiento de cría de esta especie para comercio. La inclusión en el apéndice 2 de estas dos especies puede promover la obtención de datos reales sobre el comercio internacional y comprender de manera integral el uso de estas especies y sus partes mediante un comercio legal, sostenible y trazable, evitando así el tráfico ilegal y la sobreexplotación, por lo que instamos a las partes a la adopción de esta propuesta. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. I will take 2 more parties. Honduras.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Nosotros en Honduras, por ser país de distribución límite norteña, estamos muy preocupados por las poblaciones, de tal manera que Honduras apoya firmemente la propuesta. Creemos que la evidencia científica es sólida y más aún creemos que su inclusión en este apéndice ayudará a las pocas poblaciones remanentes en la región. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much. And lastly, I will give the floor to Uruguay.
Gracias, señor presidente. Uruguay también apoya esta propuesta. Gracias.
So my sense is that we have agreement on this proposal. Before I conclude, I would give the floor to observers. If anybody wants to take the floor. I see Humane World for Animals.
Gracias, señor presidente. Realizamos esta intervención a nombre de Humane World for Animals, SSN, IFO y 18 organizaciones cuya lista será enviada a la Secretaría. Los perezosos de 2 dedos son especies emblemáticas para muchos países de la región latinoamericana y sumamente carismáticas, lo que ha incrementado su demanda en cautiverio y el comercio internacional. Las partes del perezoso se utilizan con fines alimenticios, medicinales, religiosos y ornamentales. El comercio de especímenes vivos ha sido impulsado para venderse como mascotas exóticas en zoológicos y en atracciones turísticas con encuentros escenificados y selfies que afectan seriamente a las poblaciones silvestres. Los perezosos de 2 dedos están bajo categorías de amenaza en países de su rango de distribución como Costa Rica, Honduras y Brasil, y durante los últimos años han experimentado un declive en sus poblaciones al mismo tiempo que se incrementa su comercio internacional. Desde la perspectiva de aplicación de la ley en puntos de inspección, existe una gran similitud entre ambas especies, por lo que incluir solo una de las especies de perezosos de 2 dedos haría prácticamente imposible para los inspectores distinguirlas, ya que una identificación precisa requiere de análisis especializados de ADN y otros. Si solo se incluye una de las especies, la demanda definitivamente se desplazará hacia la especie que no está protegida, algo que hemos visto que ocurre con otras especies. Por tales razones, instamos a las partes a apoyar a los países del rango de distribución de esta especie en la inclusión en el apéndice 2 de las CITES. La alteración de su hábitat, el aumento del comercio, junto con las bajas tasas de supervivencia en cautividad, indican que ambas especies no pueden esperar hasta la próxima COP para ser regulados. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. And with this, I would close the list. And I would conclude, and especially as Japan has mentioned that they would not block consensus, so I take it that proposal 11 on Coleopus didactylus and Coleopus of money to include these 2 species in Appendix 2 has been accepted by consensus in this committee. Thank you very much. Now we can move to the next proposal, which is CoP20 Prop 12 on Cercocebus chrysogaster, the golden-bellied mangabey. It's a proposal to transfer the species from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. It has been submitted by Democratic Republic of Congo. So, DRC, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Les Cercobus chrysogaster a été réévalué sur la liste rouge de l'UICN, passant des données insuffisantes à comme une espèce en danger. Notons que l'espèce a été identifiée comme parmi les 25 espèces de primates les plus menacées au monde. En réponse au récent déclin alarmant de sa population, ceci tient sa justification par le déclin actuel de toutes les populations connues en raison de 3 menaces principales. La chasse intense pour la viande de brousse, la perte ou la dégradation de son habitat, résultat de la conversion des terres pour l'agriculture et l'exploitation forestière, et enfin, le commerce international issu d'individus capturés dans la nature. Les études conduites dans les zones de répartition il y a 10 ans avaient démontré une population abondante dans les aires protégées et en dehors de ces derniers. Mais plus récemment, il a été constaté sur base des saisies à certains postes frontaliers dans la zone sud-est et nord-est qu'il a été enregistré des cas de trafic transfrontalier, transnational. Ces révélations, d'après les rapports produits par les services nationaux, confirmés avec force détail des résultats des rapports des WCMC, l'espèce se révèle être menacée au risque d'être en extinction. Son classement à l'annexe 1 est justifié du fait que l'espèce répond à la résolution CONF 9.24, REV COP 17, plus spécifiquement au critère BI, car son aire de répartition restreinte d'environ 70 000 km², assortie d'une faible densité de population et une présence dans seulement 2 sites isolés, qui sont le Sankourou et la Salonga, et les biotopes qui se circoncient. Les commerces ces dernières années, après la Covid, semblent avoir augmenté d'après les statistiques des WCMC sur base des sources des exportateurs. Reporter plusieurs certains spécimens qui sont exportés à l'extérieur, qui sont en exportation. La RDC se propose de mettre en place des mesures de renforcement de ces classements à l'annexe 1 de l'espèce Cercosegbus chrysostère, certaines mesures aussi bien stratégiques qu'opérationnelles, à savoir, premièrement, les inventaires systématiques des populations de l'ouest et de l'est de la zone de répartition. Deuxièmement, les renforcements de contrôle et de répression sur les routings nord-est du pays, d'où partent d'importants convois de spécimens trafiqués illégalement par les réseaux de criminels transfrontaliers. Troisièmement, les arrêts désormais de toute émission de permis sur base de quotas prudents et les renforcements de contrôle et des mesures de répression aux points d'entrée et de sortie. Quatrièmement, une campagne d'éveil de conscience des communautés riveraines pour se mettre en ordre. Monsieur le Président, je conclus en disant la RDC encourage toutes les parties à soutenir l'inscription de cette espèce à l'annexe 1 de la Convention. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, DRC. I open now the floor to parties. I see, and please in your interventions, please be brief. We still have 10 proposals to go. So, Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal apporte son soutien à l'inscription du mangabey à ventre doré à l'annexe 1 de la CITES. En effet, cette espèce endémique des forêts de la République démocratique du Congo fait face à une régression dramatique de ses populations, principalement en raison de la déforestation rapide de son habitat, de la chasse de subsistance et du commerce illégal de viande de brousse. C'est pour cette raison que nous appuyons cette proposition et nous réaffirmons notre engagement à préserver les primates africains menacés et à contribuer à la lutte contre l'érosion accélérée de la biodiversité. Nous invitons donc les parties à adopter sans réserve l'inscription du mangabey à ventre doré à l'annexe 1 afin d'assurer la survie de cette espèce unique et irremplaçable. Merci.
Thank you. Tunisia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Tunisie appuie fortement la proposition 12 présentée par la République démocratique du Congo. Merci.
Thank you. Brazil.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Brésil voudrait indiquer qu'il soutient complètement cette proposition de la République démocratique du Congo. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Niger.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Le Niger appuie la proposition 12 telle que présentée par la République démocratique du Congo.
Thank you. Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Considering the information provided by the proponent country and the conservation status of the species, Iran supports this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mozambique.
Thank you, Chair. Mozambique is making the statement on behalf of African group, which is also in support for the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have now European Union.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je prends la parole au nom de l'Union européenne et ses États membres. Nous soutenons fortement la proposition visant à transférer Cercosegbus chrysogaster de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1. L'espèce est endémique de l'RDC et figure sur la liste des 25 primates les plus menacés au monde. Cependant, l'espèce ne semble pas bénéficier d'une protection nationale en RDC. Sans protection nationale et effort de conservation efficace, une inscription à l'annexe 1 ne suffira pas à protéger l'espèce de l'extinction. Nous exhorterons donc vivement la RDC à adopter une législation nationale sur la chasse, l'abattage et le commerce de l'espèce, ainsi qu'à mettre en œuvre des plans de gestion nationaux dédiés, un suivi robuste des populations et des mesures de conservation pour atténuer les menaces liées à la perte et à la dégradation de l'habitat. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, European Union. I now have Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Argentina apoya firmemente esta propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support this proposal.
Dominican Republic.
Gracias, señor presidente. República Dominicana apoya la propuesta.
I see we have broad support for this proposal, so I will limit the number of speakers that I will take, because we see that we have agreement on that one. So I would ask United Kingdom to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would like to support this proposal. Thank you.
And Uzbekistan.
Также поддерживает полностью это предложение.
Okay, and one last intervention from Morocco.
Thank you, Chair. Morocco joins its voice to the others and strongly support the transfer to the Appendix 1 for this species. Thank you.
So thank you very much. It appears we have consensus on that proposal. I now open the floor to observers. I have Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance.
Thank you very much, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of 18 organizations, including Pan-African Sanctuary Alliance, Pro-Wildlife, Lukuru Wildlife Research Foundation, and others. We would like to congratulate the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for submitting this proposal. Golden-bellied mangabey can be found only in one country in the world, the DRC. And as the speaker from the DRC mentioned earlier, this species is identified by the IUCN Primate Specialist Group as one of the 25 most threatened primate species of the world due to its alarming recent population decline, an estimate of 40% decrease within 20 years. There are only 2 isolated populations of this endemic species, heavily under pressure from hunting for local wild meat markets, but also by an increasing demand for international trade in live young animals for non-accredited private zoos and collections. A seizure in Zimbabwe in 2022 found 12 golden-bellied mangabeys among the 26 confiscated primates destined for markets internationally. Upon the confiscation, Zimbabwe and DRC collaborated on the repatriation of the monkeys. The animals have been rehabilitating at an accredited sanctuary in southern DRC. We urge all parties to support the proposal and thank for all the parties who have spoken in support of this proposal. This endangered and endemic species must be afforded with the highest level of protection under CITES. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. So the conclusion is that the proposal Prop 12 on Cercospes chrysogaster, the golden-bellied mangabey, to transfer that species from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 has been accepted in consensus. We now turn our attention to Proposal 15. It's CoP20 Prop 15 on Bicanistes and Ceratogymna SPP African hornbills to include these species in Appendix 2. The proponents are Cameroon, Congo, Gabon, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. So I see Nigeria has asked for the floor. I think you will be introducing that proposal. Nigeria, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Nigeria is pleased to introduce Proposal 15 for the inclusion of two genera of African hornbills, Ceratogymna and Bicanistes, in Appendix 2 of CITES for consideration by the Conference of the Parties. These iconic species represent the large-bodied forest-dwelling hornbills that are endemic to Africa. They have ranges in West, Central, East, and South Africa. And while sources differ, recent research indicates that this genera include 9 different species. Like other hornbill species, notably Asian hornbills, African hornbills possess a combination of traits that make them both highly sought after in trade and extremely vulnerable to overexploitation. While nearly all of Asian hornbills have been included in the CITES appendices since 1992, no African hornbills are currently included, and yet they face similar threats. Between 2012 and 2023, substantial numbers of individuals from this genera were highly traded for commercial, hunting, and personal purposes, with skulls comprising over half of the traded items. Ceratogymna and Bicanistes species, like many of Asian hornbills, have uniquely shaped skulls that are now well documented in the international curio trade. For example, nearly all species have been found in import data to the US and in increasing numbers over time. They are imported both as live individuals, but more commonly as parts, with the highest quantities being feathers and skulls. A recent study suggests that international demand for these hornbills, particularly for their heads, may be driving hunting of this species. It must be emphasized that this concerning information is undoubtedly underestimating global demand and trade in this species. African hornbill species also have slow life history characteristics, including low reproductive output, as well as unique mating strategy. Females seal themselves inside natural tree cavities while incubating eggs until chicks are hatched. They are dependent on the male for food during this time, and as such, harvest of males can have additional impact on the population through loss of females and chicks as well. These hornbills face additional threats, including habitat loss and fragmentation, and nearly all species have declining populations. Taken together, this information strongly supports inclusion of this species in Appendix 2 of CITES to ensure that their use is sustainable and international trade is not detrimental to wild populations. Including African hornbills at the genus level is further necessary to facilitate enforcement. These birds are often traded as parts, largely isolated feathers and skulls, making species-level identification difficult, particularly for females and juveniles. They can be easily confused, not only with each other, but also with the already listed Asian hornbills, which complicates the enforcement of protection for this species. We therefore urge all parties to join us in conserving African hornbills and support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigeria. I now open the floor to parties. I see Benin. Benin, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Bénin porte la voix donc, de la région Afrique qui a analysé avec beaucoup d'attention cette proposition et soutient entièrement donc, cette proposition, et comme cela a été déjà pour la proposition précédente. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Benin. I see Brazil.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Brazil fully supports this proposal for including this emblematic African species in Appendix 2. Mr. Chair, this is a co-endemic species and the range states are seeking to increase its conservation. We believe that the countries of origin who exert their sovereignty on their own national resources are best suitable to point the best direction for the conservation of that species. So we fully support this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My delegation supports strongly this proposal and appeals to the other delegations, as previously said, to join in back in this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. La Argentina apoya esta propuesta.
Thank you, Argentina. I have Singapore.
Thank you, Chair. Singapore supports the proposal to include both genus of African hornbills in Appendix 2.
Thank you. I have Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan supports this proposal for the following reasons. First, the range of this species is restricted, and for most of the species, population declines have been reported. Second, it is reported that international demand is increasing for the heads of the hornbills, and this trend has been identified as a driving factor of hunting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Japan. I have European Union.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We thank the proponents for submitting this proposal with the aim of safeguarding African hornbills. Altogether, 9 species is proposed for listing with mostly declining population trends. Due to their long lifespans, low reproductive rates, and their unique breeding strategy, the biological criteria for listing are met. Threats to these species include inter alia harvesting for subsistence use, but also for international trade, which fully justify their inclusion in Appendix 2. According to our assessment, Ceratogymna atrata and elata and Bicanistes albotibialis, brevis, and cylindricus meet criterion 2A to be listed in Appendix 2. All the other species meet criterion 2B as lookalikes. Therefore, Mr. Chair, the EU and its member states support this proposal.
Thank you, EU. I have Ethiopia.
Thank you, Chair. Listing the species in Appendix 2 helps us to regulate international trade and significantly contributes to the efforts made for the future conservation. So Ethiopia strongly supports the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can already see where this is going, I think, but I will take some more parties. So I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome this proposal and thank the proponents for submitting it. As the species are traded and in demand, including internationally, a listing should support the conservation of these species. The proposal meets Annex 2A criterion B and Annex 2B criterion A. We believe that the looking like listing is appropriate and should aid enforcement. We therefore support this proposal for listing both on the Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. I have Kenya.
Here, Kenya support the proposal. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I will take 3 more parties and then I will try to conclude. I have the United States.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. The United States supports this proposal. We have determined that these species meet the criteria for inclusion in Appendix 2, and we expect that regulating trade in them will help parties to better assess conservation impacts of international trade on their wild populations, help ensure that harvest for trade is not threatening those populations, and facilitate CITES implementation for law enforcement personnel. Thank you.
Thank you. Central African Republic.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La République centrafricaine faisant partie de l'aire de répartition de cette espèce, et en République centrafricaine, cette espèce étant une espèce intégralement protégée, appuie fortement la proposition 15 pour l'inscription de ces espèces en annexe 2. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. And lastly, I will give the floor to the Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. The Philippines aligns with the other parties who supported this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we seem to have unanimous support. I would like to open the floor for a short statement by observers. I have the Mabula Ground Hornbill Project.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of 18 organizations, and we will submit the list to the CITES Secretariat for the record. We strongly support the range state-led proposal to include all species within the genera Ceratogymna and Bicanistes in CITES Appendix 2. Hornbills already face severe threats from habitat loss, fragmentation, compounded by significant and increasing pressure from unsustainable hunting for subsistence, medicinal, ritual, or fetish, and now critically for escalating international trade. Hornbills are highly vulnerable due to their life histories and the female's incarceration in the sealed nest. Listing these genera in Appendix 2 will provide the necessary regulatory frameworks for the monitoring of international trade and ensure traceability, thereby strengthening conservation efforts. The evidence of decreasing population trends and local extirpations underscores the urgent need for enhanced national and international protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with this, I conclude that the Committee on Proposal 15, Bicanistes and Ceratogymna SPP, the African hornbills, accepts to include these species in Appendix 2, accepts that proposal in consensus. So now we move on to the next proposal, which is CoP20 Prop 16 on Gibbs africanus and Gibbs rupelli, the white-backed vulture and the Ruppell's vulture. It's a proposal to transfer these two species from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. Proponents are Benin, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Chad, Congo, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Togo. I see Niger has asked for the floor, so please introduce the document, the proposal.
Okay. Merci, Monsieur le Président. Au nom du gouvernement du Niger, je vous prie de bien vouloir soutenir la proposition visant à transférer deux espèces de vautours, Gyps rupelli et Gyps africanis, de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1. Conformément à l'article 2, paragraphe 1 et annexe 1A de la Convention. Cette proposition bénéficie d'un large soutien régional. Outre le Niger, les pays co-auteurs sont le Bénin, le Burkina Faso, le Burundi, le Cameroun, le Tchad, le Congo, la Gambie, la Guinée, le Nigeria, le Sénégal, la Sierra Leone et le Togo. Ces deux espèces, comme vous le savez, sont classées en danger critique d'extinction sur la liste rouge de l'IUCN en raison de déclins sévères et rapides de leur population. De nombreux pays ont subi des pertes catastrophiques allant jusqu'à des extirpations à grande échelle et parfois des extinctions nationales. Parallèlement, le commerce est légal et illégal au niveau national et international des spécimens vivants et des parties du corps est en hausse poussée par une forte valeur marchande. Les parties de vautours sont largement utilisées donc à des fins de croyance dans plusieurs cultures africaines. Les commerçants rapportent d'ailleurs qu'elles sont recherchées pour traiter l'épilepsie, la folie, les AVC, pour offrir une protection spirituelle contre les mauvais esprits, ou encore pour obtenir des pouvoirs surnaturels. Un commerce transfrontalier de leur viande est largement documenté. La plupart des États de l'aire de répartition en Afrique de l'Ouest ont interdit la mise à mort et la récolte des vautours et de leurs œufs. Selon le PNUE et le WCMC 2021, une protection juridique est confirmée dans 10 États parmi les 11 examinés et probablement en place dans au moins 2 autres. Malgré les protections, les preuves montrent un commerce transfrontalier important des parties de vautours. Entre 2019 et 2022, les exportateurs ont déclaré 67 exportations de Gyps africanis, oiseaux vivants, trophées, corps, crânes, plumes, dont 65 provenaient du milieu naturel. De 2019 à 2023, les exportateurs ont déclaré 137 exportations de Gyps rupelli, individus vivants, trophées et corps, dont 133 prélevés dans la nature. Le transfert de Gyps africanis et Gyps rupelli à l'annexe 1 est indispensable pour renforcer leur protection internationale et lutter contre le commerce illégal qui pousse ces espèces au bord de l'extinction. Nous invitons respectivement les parties à soutenir cette proposition. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Niger. I now open the floor to parties. I see Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal soutient la proposition pour plusieurs raisons. Nous avons 8 vautours en Afrique et la gypse ripelli et gypse africanis jouent un rôle important dans la chaîne des vautours. Vous savez, ces deux espèces ont un bec corchu et robuste, capable d'ouvrir les carcasses des animaux qui sont morts. Je le dis au regard du rôle écologique que jouent ces vautours dans le nettoyage de notre écosystème. En principe, c'est les deux espèces qui arrivent les premiers sur la carcasse d'un animal qui est mort pour l'ouvrir, manger et puis laisser les autres vautours venir manger. Mais il y a un aspect très important que je tiens à partager par mes observations scientifiques. Ces deux espèces, quand ils trouvent une carcasse d'un animal qui est mort couchée du côté droit, ils vont pas, côté gauche autant pour moi, ils ne vont pas l'ouvrir et les vautours ne vont pas manger. Donc, mesdames, messieurs, je vous prie, quand vous trouvez dans vos... S'il n'est pas en putréfaction, renversez l'animal du côté droit, le côté droit, les vautours vont l'ouvrir. Voilà ce que je tenais à partager avec vous. Le reste, c'est une question de publication, peut-être qu'il ne va pas tarder, mais c'est des observations tangibles. Merci.
Thank you, Senegal. I have Tunisia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Tunisie appuie fortement la proposition 16 qui concerne le transfert de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1 de la CITES de ces deux espèces de vautours africains à dos blanc et vautours de repel qui sont classés par l'UICN en danger critique d'extinction. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Djibouti.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Notre délégation appuie le transfert des gypses africanus et gypses ripelli à l'annexe 2, de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1. Notre pays avait classé ces espèces presque disparues sur notre territoire dans les années 90 jusqu'aux années 2000. En 2020, nous avons lancé un vaste programme scientifique pour le suivi des pernoptères d'Égypte à Djibouti. Durant ce programme, nous avons observé 19 individus de vautours rupels et 9 vautours vauves près de la frontière avec l'Éthiopie. Ces espèces ne sont pas visées par le commerce international dans mon pays. À ce titre, par souci de conservation, nous nous alignons à cette proposition. Nous aimerions aussi remercier le partage d'expérience du collègue du Sénégal pour ces propos qui nous encouragent à poursuivre nos études scientifiques. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Djibouti. I now have the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We thank the proponents for preparing this proposal with the aim of strengthening the protection of West African vultures. According to our assessment, the species meet the biological listing criterion C to be included in Appendix 1, as both of them are considered critically endangered with an inferred declining population trend of more than 80% over the last 3 generations, and local extinctions have been reported across their range. Trade is mainly for belief-based use purposes, which occurs mostly domestically. However, illegal cross-border trade is also documented within the region, and both species are considered affected by trade. We would like to highlight that the other West African vultures, namely the griffon vulture, the hooded vulture, the Egyptian vulture, the lap-faced vulture, and the white-headed vulture, face the same threats. Therefore, it is a question, what could be the effect of an Appendix 1 listing on all other vulture species in the region? To avoid the shifting of trade to Appendix 2 species, the EU and its member states recommend to the proponents to consider the publication of an annual zero export quota for all of these species. This could provide the necessary safeguards for all affected vulture populations in West Africa. With these considerations, Chair, we support this proposal.
Thank you, EU. I now have Eswatini.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state of white-backed vultures, Eswatini holds a significant breeding stronghold of this species for Southern Africa. There's significant demand for body parts for cultural purposes, mainly obtained during mass poisoning events involving hundreds of these long-lived, slow-breeding birds at a time. Being a small country, our breeding colony is highly threatened by poisoning events beyond our borders in neighboring countries. It is therefore important that national enforcement measures and awareness be exercised in all African countries. In addition to the support of uplisting of this species to Appendix 1, as Eswatini supports. Thank you.
Thank you, Eswatini. Ghana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ghana is a range state of both Gapes africanus and Gapes rupelli, and commend the proponents for the work done. Over the years, we have witnessed significant declines in the population of these critically important species. Our national legislation grants full protection to all birds of prey, including these two species. Furthermore, both species are listed in Appendix 1 of the Convention of Migratory Species, to which Ghana is a party. In light of the severe population declines and the urgent need for strengthening international protection, Ghana fully supports the proposal to transfer both species from CITES Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you. I now have Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Supporting statements by EU, Iran supports the proposal too and believes that all the vulture species needs for conservation and more attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente. Panamá apoya la propuesta.
Thank you very much. South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa would like to just express a cautionary note here in terms of this proposal to uplist to Appendix 1. We do thank the proponents for this proposal and we will support it. However, the regional trade in vulture body parts occurs despite laws already protecting these species. And an Appendix 1 listing is unlikely to address the illegal, unregulated cross-border trade in African range states, but could exacerbate it. With an Appendix 1 listing, there is no option for adaptive management, as trade would effectively be prohibited. Traditional use will nevertheless continue. There is also already a multi-species action plan under the CMS to address the illegal trade and persecution of the species. Within South Africa, a biodiversity management plan has been enacted to conserve the species. And finally, we wish to point out that there's already a SADC vulture conservation strategy and action plan in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, South Africa. I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We thank the various proponents for submitting this proposal. The large number of range states who are proponents indicates widespread support for this uplisting from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1. Both species meet the biological criteria for listing in Appendix 1, having undergone marked declines. I hope that the proponents continue to work collaboratively to address the threats that these species face, and we can support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a long list of parties, and I think I have a sense of the room that there is agreement in support of this proposal. I will take 4 more interventions, and then I will close the list. So I have Cameroon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Cameroun est co-auteur de cette proposition et réaffirme son soutien au transfert du vautour de Rupel et du vautour africain de l'annexe 2 à l'annexe 1. Le Cameroun se trouve au cœur de plusieurs routes de commerce illicites reliant l'Afrique centrale, l'Afrique de l'Ouest et au-delà. Les études citées dans le document de proposition indiquent que les vautours et leurs parties transitent ou proviennent de notre sous-région pour alimenter les marchés très éloignés des lieux de capture. Face à cette situation, le maintien des espèces en annexe 2 ne suffit plus. Le passage à l'annexe 1 est une étape nécessaire pour mettre fin à ces flux illégaux, en cohérence avec le plan d'action multi-espèces de la CMS. Le Cameroun invite donc instamment les parties à soutenir cette proposition. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Kenya?
Thank you, Chair. Vultures are the most threatened and endangered birds of prey with serious trade issues. In Kenya, both sentinel and untargeted poisoning is commonly used by poachers. Kenya has developed a multi-species action plan for the protection of all the species. Kenya therefore supports the decision to list the species in Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya. And finally, Russian Federation.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Мы рассмотрели документ. Роль грифов в экосистемах очень высока, но также они подвергаются добыванию и реализации на региональном и международном рынке. Эти факторы, а также незаконная торговля частями тела для использования в медицинских, гастрономических и религиозных целях представляют собой существенную угрозу для этих видов. Относительно низкие темпы размножения делают популяции грифов особенно уязвимыми к высокому уровню изъятия. Учитывая изложенное, считаем возможным поддержать перенос видов Гипс африканус и Гипс рупелли из приложения 2 в приложение 1 в соответствии с критерием С приложения 1 к резолюции 9.24. Спасибо.
Thank you, Russian Federation. So I have only heard support, so I take it that we are in agreement on that proposal. I would now open the floor for an observer to take the floor. It's BirdLife International.
Thank you, Chair. The intervention is made by BirdLife International on behalf of 23 conservation and observer organizations. We will provide the list of organizations to the Secretariat. African vultures are facing catastrophic declines. 7 out of 11 species are threatened with extinction on the IUCN Red List, with poisoning and trade the greatest drivers of their decline. This proposal is vital and timely for the survival of vultures. We congratulate the proponents for showing leadership with this listing proposal to transfer white-backed vulture and Ruppel's vulture from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 and express our strong support for it. It can be difficult to distinguish between vulture species, and this challenge is greater for body parts. We therefore see the provision of identification materials as essential. We consider this proposal an important step forward, but we encourage parties to consider a group listing for African vultures at the next COP, given evidence of international trade in several other species. We look forward to liaising with parties during the interim period to consider possible ways of working together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, BirdLife International. If the 4 parties who are still asking for the floor are in favor of this proposal, please take yourself off the list. I think we have had enough support for that proposal. Brazil, are you in opposition of that proposal? Brazil?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, this was a legacy. Of course, we support this proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. And I suppose Burkina Faso is also in support of that proposal. So I take it that proposal CoP20, Prop 16, to transfer the species Gips africanus and Gips rupelli from Appendix 2 to Appendix 1 is accepted by consensus. So thank you very much. I see Burkina Faso is still asking for the floor, so Burkina Faso.
Oui, merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Je pense que nous sommes co-auteurs et il était quand même bien de nous donner la parole. Donc, merci bien, c'est tout.
Thank you. Now I would turn our attention to COP20 Prop 17 on Falco peregrinus. It's a a proposal to transfer that species from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2. The proposal has been submitted by Canada and the United States, and I would like to invite Canada to present this proposal. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We appreciate the opportunity to present Proposal 17 on the peregrine falcon on behalf of Canada and our co-sponsor, the United States of America. The proposal is to transfer Falco peregrinus from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2 in accordance with the precautionary measures in Annex 4 of Resolution COP 9.24. The peregrine falcon does not meet the biological criteria for Appendix 1, given its large and widespread global population. Rather, the peregrine meets the criteria for Appendix 2, where regulation of trade is required. In 2021, the peregrine was assessed again on the IUCN Red List as least concern globally, and has been for more than a decade, using both population and geographic data as is normal for such an assessment. It has a very large global population, estimated to be 248 to 478,000 mature individuals. The global population trend is increasing. The global trade, according to CITES data, is around 1,500 live birds per year, primarily from captive bred sources. After consulting with parties and further research, we are satisfied that the precautionary measures for an Appendix 2 listing are met. In particular, parties most involved in trade have very strong measures in place, confirmed by their response to our 2024 notification and supported by the IUCN traffic analysis and others. Peregrine continues to be traded primarily for falconry. The species is bred in captivity in significant numbers to fulfill this demand. To be very clear, as proponents, our motivation is not wild trade of the peregrine. Rather, the rationale for this proposal is the proper application of the CITES listing criteria under Resolution COP 9.24 for a successfully recovered species. Appropriate implementation of the Convention is extremely important to its effective and efficient functioning overall. We have heard some concerns about increased risk of illegal trade with an Appendix 2 species listing. Like other species, illegal trade in peregrine is difficult to assess, but available data indicates that international illegal trade is limited, and the peregrine is not the most sought-after falcon species. This proposal acknowledges that some threats to individuals and local populations exist, including from avian flu, as would be normal for a large, geographically widespread global population. However, these threats do not jeopardize the robust global population and could be managed nationally under an Appendix 2 listing. With respect to avian flu, recent peer-reviewed research has been showing less impact on peregrine than on other raptor species, with peregrine not likely to be an avian flu vector. We are also reassured that an Appendix 2 listing would continue to require regular review by all parties via non-detriment findings that would in turn account for avian flu and any other impacts. The controls offered by an Appendix 2 listing are robust and fulsome for this least concerned species. This is how CITES is designed to work. Now in its 50th year, CITES has proven effective and essential for species conservation. We should treat species recovery success as it was intended by the Convention by listing the species appropriately. Not only does this respect the intention of the Convention, but it will in turn assist with the effective and efficient implementation of CITES, so important right now given many other emerging issues. With this in mind, we submit this proposal to transfer peregrine falcon from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I now open the floor to parties. I see Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. Kuwait would like to express its sincere thanks to Canada and the US for this important proposal. This proposal represents a true success story under CITES Convention, reflecting how science-based management and regional collaboration can secure the future of the species. As mentioned by Canada, the biological data clearly shows that peregrine falcon no longer meet the criteria for Appendix 1. Kuwait also wished to underline the profound culture, traditional and national significance of the peregrine falcon in our region. Falconry is not simply a sport, it is a centuries-old heritage, deeply rooted in the Gulf identity. Precisely because of this importance, all the GCC countries apply some of the most restricted controls in the world for identification, traceability, and legal ownership of the falcon. Across the GCC, we maintain mandatory ring and microchip system, electronic falcon passport, unified ownership transfer procedure, and most importantly, a complete ban on taking peregrine falcon from the wild. These measures have created a closed, transparent system where illegal specimens simply cannot be integrated. Moreover, the Gulf states have adopted a dedicated regional GCC falcon conservation program as a part of the Regional Wildlife Operation Plan for 2030. This program includes harmonized legislation, coordinates population monitoring, habitat restoration, and shared regional genetic database for traceability, joint enforcement action, and capacity building across all the member states. These are concentrate long-term conservation commitment that directly ensure the species remain secure and sustainably managed in our region. For these reasons, and based on the strong scientific and regulatory foundation, Kuwait strongly supports this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kuwait. I have Djibouti.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président, pour la parole accordée. Les programmes de conservation partout dans le monde nous ont permis de sauver de nombreuses espèces sauvages menacées d'extinction. Ces programmes sont le fruit des décennies de coopération entre les parties, des financements de recherche scientifique, des transferts de connaissances et de technologies nord-sud, sud-nord, et des prises de décisions souvent très difficiles pour beaucoup de parties prenantes de nos pays. Parmi ces espèces, nous avons le faucon plérin. Cette espèce emblématique a connu des moments difficiles. La chasse, les maladies, les produits chimiques, entre autres, ont fortement réduit sa population. Nous devons nous rappeler afin de ne pas repartir en arrière. Monsieur le Président, les chiffres sont très encourageants pour le faucon plérin. Le comité scientifique Partner in Flight en 2020 ont estimé sa population entre 100 000 à 499 000 individus matures. Ces données mondiales sont la base de l'IUCN en 2021 pour classer cette espèce préoccupation mineure à l'échelle mondiale. Ces chiffres et cette catégorisation de l'IUCN sont assez félicités, mais elles sont très récentes. Aussi, elles ne couvrent pas l'ensemble de l'aire de répartition de cette espèce. Sur ces données, il est mentionné uniquement 2300 à 2900 ont été estimés en Afrique du Nord, mais aucun chiffre sur l'Afrique subsaharienne. De plus, nous aimerions attirer votre attention que la demande internationale de cette espèce a considérablement augmenté. De plus de 15 500 individus, y compris d'origine sauvage, ont été exportés entre 2015 et 2024, soit 5 fois plus que sur la même période précédente. Notons que la demande pour le commerce international de cette espèce est très importante. À ce titre, nous inquiétons que le transfert de cette espèce de l'annexe 2 pourrait orienter la majorité du commerce légal et illégal vers les individus sauvages. Chers collègues, le faucon plérin est une rareté en Afrique. De plus, exposé à un cocktail de risques. Chaque perte compte. En outre, les lacunes de données sur le commerce illégal et les capacités limitées de certaines parties de l'aire de répartition pour mettre en place des mesures de contrôle adéquats pour protéger les faucons plérin sauvages contre la surexploitation et la capture non durable sont à prendre en considération. Enfin, nous jugeons qu'à ce stade, les critères énoncés dans l'annexe 4 portant sur les mesures de précaution de la résolution COP 9.24 REF COP 17 ne sont pas remplis pour transférer cette espèce d'annexe 1 à l'annexe 2 de la CITES. Étant donné que notre pays se trouve sur l'heure de répartition de cette espèce, nous avons une responsabilité et nous sommes dans l'obligation de rejeter cette proposition. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Djibouti. I have over 30 parties wanting to speak. I don't think everyone will be able to speak, especially if you are being lengthy. So please be brief so that we can have as many parties asking for the floor as possible. So I open now the floor to the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We thank Canada and the US for submitting this proposal. While we know that the species, especially some northern hemisphere populations, show an increasing population trend, local declines have been reported partly due to outbreaks of highly pathogenic avian influenza. Although the species has a wide area of distribution, a large global population size, which is reported to be increasing globally, and the species is classified as least concerned by IUCN, it should be noted that the data quality used in the IUCN assessment is considered poor. The proposal was mainly based on information from a few relatively well-studied populations in Europe and North America, and did not take into account the vast data gaps from the rest of the world. A review of the IUCN database reveals that the peregrine status is unknown for 63% of all countries' territories evaluated. For most peregrine populations in South America, Africa, and Australasia, their distribution range, productivity, numbers, breeding, and conservation status are poorly known. Of the world's 19 currently recognized subspecies of the peregrine, data gaps persist for at least 11 subspecies. Currently, most of the trade is in captive bred birds, but downlisting to Appendix 2 would open the opportunity for legal commercial trade in wild-caught birds, and thus potentially threaten wild populations, especially fragile ones in parts of the distribution range, where the species may not be nationally protected or enforcement is insufficient. In addition, lowering of the level of its protection might also result in less stringent domestic safeguards. We also note that transferring the species from Appendix 1 to 2 would entail the loss of traceability and the control over traded specimens, increasing the risk of floundering of wild-caught birds as captive bred. In addition, recent population data show a decline of certain European populations, which also justifies a precautionary approach. Therefore, Mr. Chair, the EU and its member states cannot support the proposal.
Thank you, EU. Now we have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK thanks the proponents for this proposal, and the UK considers that Falco peregrinus no longer meets the biological criteria for inclusion in Appendix 1 and satisfies the precautionary measures required for downlisting to Appendix 2. The species has a near circumglobal distribution and an extremely large population that is believed to be increasing. Recent trade has been relatively small, approximately 1,500 specimens per year, and dominated by live captive bred specimens. We do not consider that listing the species in Appendix 2 would stimulate wild source trade, as existing demand is almost entirely met by captive bred stock, primarily from Europe. The proponents have stated that they have no intention of initiating wild take, and the proposal confirms that national regulations in major trading countries and other range states would remain in place. In the UK, the species would continue to be treated as if it were in Appendix 1. It would remain in Annex A of our wildlife trade regulations, the equivalent of a CITES Appendix 1 listing, consistent with other protections afforded to it nationally. This is not unusual, with more than 200 animal taxa currently included in Annex A that are not currently on Appendix 1, including native raptors such as the golden eagle and hen harrier. Additionally, the UK has no intention of restarting wild take domestically and has domestic legislations in place to protect those native wild specimens. Of course, Appendix 2 trade regulations require non-detriment and legal acquisition findings, and compliance mechanisms are in place if concerns are identified. We recognise that non-trade threats, such as highly pathogenic avian influenza, are significant and increasingly of concern, Nevertheless, HPAI is increasingly a broader concern for raptor conservation generally, and not only for peregrines. The recovery of the peregrine falcon is a success story. It is no longer threatened with extinction, which is the primary consideration for its inclusion to Appendix 1. In conclusion, the UK supports the proposal to downlist the peregrine falcon as it no longer meets the criteria for inclusion in Appendix 1, and we consider that the precautionary measures in Annex 4 of Resolution Conf 9.24 are met. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. Could I remind parties when they speak to be close to the microphone so that we can hear you well? Next on the list is China.
Thank you, Chair. China aligns ourselves to Kuwait. We support this proposal to transfer this species from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
I have Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Esta declaración es en nombre de las siguientes partes: República Dominicana, Honduras, Panamá, Belice, Antigua y Barbuda, Costa Rica, Uruguay, Chile, Guatemala y Argentina, es decir, 10 partes. El halcón peregrino, Falco peregrinus, se recuperó notablemente tras su casi extinción en los años 60 y 70 gracias a la prohibición del insecticida DDT, los programas de reintroducción y su protección legal y su inclusión en 1977 en el apéndice 1 de las CITES, que prohíbe su comercio internacional salvo para ejemplares criados en cautiverio. En esta COP se propone transferir la especie del apéndice 1 al apéndice 2. Esto, entre otras cosas, flexibilizaría los controles sobre el comercio y la tenencia. Esta iniciativa se apoya en la evaluación de la UICN de 2021, que clasifica al halcón peregrino como preocupación menor, basándose principalmente en datos de Europa y América del Norte. No obstante, numerosos especialistas y organizaciones advierten que este cambio de apéndice sería prematuro y riesgoso por las siguientes razones. Las poblaciones de África, Asia y América del Sur no están adecuadamente evaluadas y en regiones como Europa y Norteamérica se registran descensos recientes posiblemente asociados a la influenza aviar. Pasar del apéndice 2 eliminaría ciertas obligaciones de marcado y trazabilidad, facilitando la introducción de aves silvestres capturadas ilegalmente. La reclasificación podría incrementar la presión sobre otras especies de halcones como Falcus rusticolis, Falcus huger y Falco cherrug, dada la dificultad para diferenciarlas y la debilidad de los mecanismos de fiscalización. No se cumplen plenamente las condiciones del anexo 4 de la resolución 9.24 que exigen controles efectivos y ausencia de demanda comercial antes de reducir el nivel de protección, es decir, cuando existan dudas sobre si una especie cumple o no los criterios de inclusión en el apéndice 1 o 2, la especie deberá mantenerse en el apéndice que le brinde mayor protección. La propuesta de transferir al halcón peregrino al apéndice 2 no cuenta con evidencia global suficiente y podría reavivar el comercio, comprometiendo décadas de esfuerzos de conservación. Por ello, se recomienda mantener su inclusión en el apéndice 1 de CITES hasta disponer de información completa y garantías de manejo sostenible en todo su rango de distribución. Es decir, no apoyamos esta propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Argentina. I have Lebanon.
Monsieur le Président, le Liban soutient la proposition 17 et appuie la position du Koweït. Je vous remercie.
United States.
Thank you, Chair. The U.S. is a co-proponent on this proposal, and this proposal represents a conservation success story by parties, indigenous peoples, as well as local communities and other stakeholders who care for the peregrine falcon. Peregrine falcons have a very large global population and no longer meet the biological criteria for inclusion in Appendix 1 of CITES because it does not meet the criteria outlined in Resolution Conf 9.24 Annex 1, A, B, or C. Specifically, its wild population is not considered small, its distribution is not restricted to a limited area, and there's been no marked decline in population size. These factors indicate that the species is not currently at a level of risk that warrants the highest level of protection under CITES. Under Annex 4, on precautionary measures, the peregrine falcon is recognized as a species likely to be in demand for trade. However, the management is deemed sufficient to satisfy the requirements of the Convention for transfer to Appendix 2. This includes the implementation of Article 4 by range states and the presence of appropriate enforcement controls to ensure compliance. As a result, while trade interests exist, the species is managed in a way that aligns with CITES standards. It does not necessitate an Appendix 1 listing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. I have Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. Pakistan appreciates the efforts of the proponents and recognizes the recovery of the peregrine falcon in some parts of the world. However, our national experience does not align with the declaration of illegal trade as law. Pakistan continues to face significant challenges from the illegal capture and trafficking of peregrine falcons. Trapping and trading of wild falcons remain one of the most persistent wildlife crime issues in our region due to escalating demand in black markets. Pakistan also highlights substantial data gaps for most of the subspecies in this proposal. Scientific data from many Asian range states along Central Asia flyway, including Pakistan, has not been reflected within the proposal. Without such data, it is not possible to determine whether a downlisting meets the precautionary safeguards under Resolution Conf 9.24. Emerging threats such as highly pathogenic avian influenza further increase uncertainty. While declines linked to HPAI have been documented in Europe, comparable assessments do not exist for Asian populations. Coupled with the continued high black market value of wild peregrines, easing international controls risk stimulating demand and increasing pressure on wild birds. We also note that BirdLife International has assessed data quality for this species as poor as quoted within the proposal. In circumstances of uncertainty and incomplete information, Resolution Conf 9.24 requires a precautionary approach. Pakistan therefore does not support Proposal 17 and respectfully urges all parties to retain this species in Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakistan. I have Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. We'll keep it brief. We support this proposal.
Thank you, Switzerland. UAE.
Thank you, Chair. We first would like to thank Canada and the US for their proposal. Scientific assessment confirmed that peregrine falcon no longer meets the biological criteria for Appendix 1. The species has made a strong recovery and is now assessed as least concern, with a stable population across most of its range. We also wish to highlight that the UAE's strong national measures to prevent illegal trade in falcons, only captive-bred falcons are permitted for use in the UAE, supported by comprehensive falcon passport systems that tracks movements, ownership, and origin, ensuring full traceability. Enforcement authorities apply strict border control, detected wildlife crime units, and close cooperation with international partners to prevent any illicit trade. Based on the scientific evidence and the presence of robust regulatory and enforcement mechanism, we support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UAE. Jordan.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state for this species and what previously justified by other parties, Jordan supports this proposal.
Thank you very much. I have Mexico.
Gracias, señor presidente. México agradece a Canadá y Estados Unidos por preparar esta propuesta basada en análisis de información científica sólida. Tomando en cuenta la amplia distribución del halcón peregrino en todos los continentes y una población global de casi 500,000 de individuos maduros, es evidente que la especie ya no cumple con los criterios para estar incluida en el apéndice 1 de las CITES. En México, el halcón peregrino se encuentra bajo protección especial y está bajo un activo programa de manejo y recuperación desde hace décadas. Otros países también cuentan con salvaguardas como programas nacionales de conservación, previsiones generales para la recuperación de poblaciones silvestres y esquemas de suplementación de halcones peregrinos provenientes de operaciones de cría en cautiverio para el mercado de la cetrería. Consideramos que las provisiones de las CITES en el apéndice 2 son suficientes y adecuadas para asegurar su conservación y uso sustentable. Esta especie, no por ser carismática, debe de estar en el apéndice 1. Señor presidente, es importante que, como bien lo indicó Canadá, apliquemos correctamente los criterios de inclusión de la resolución CONF 9.24 y que depuremos los apéndices para que las especies incluidas reflejen adecuadamente su estado de conservación y la necesidad de regulación de su comercio internacional, de acuerdo con nuestro plan estratégico. Esta propuesta es un buen ejemplo de esta práctica sana. Por lo anterior, México apoya la propuesta para transferir al halcón peregrino al apéndice 2. Gracias.
Thank you, Mexico. I still have 29 parties wanting to speak. I get a sense of the room that we do not have an agreement, so I will have about six parties more, and then I will propose a way forward. So I will ask now, give the floor to Bahrain.
Thank you, Chair. Bahrain supports the proposal to transfer the Peregrine falcons to Appendix 2 because the species has recovered, as studies shows that and explained by Canada, and no longer meets the criteria for Appendix 1. Listing the species under Appendix 2 will keep international trade under control through permits and non-detrimental findings, while recognizing the success of global conservation efforts for this species. Second, legal well-regulated trade will reduce smuggling, which often bypass quarantines and spread diseases such as avian flu. Under Appendix 2, bears move across borders will subject to veterinary checks, documentation, and possible quarantines, helping to detect and prevent disease and protect wild and captive populations. Bahrain also have measures similar to what mentioned by Kuwait and UAE. Thus, Bahrain support this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bahrain. I have Congo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La République du Congo tient à souligner l'importance du falcon pèlerin en tant qu'espèce migratrice reliant l'Afrique et l'Eurasie. Nous parlons ici en tant que point focal de notre pays au niveau de cet accord. Bien que l'espèce ne soit pas abondante dans notre pays, elle fait partie d'un ensemble de rapaces déjà vulnérables dans la sous-région d'Afrique centrale. Nous notons que la proposition insiste sur la réussite de la gestion dans certaines régions, mais reconnaît également l'existence du braconnage, du blanchissement de spécimens sauvages et des menaces nouvelles comme la grippe aviaire hautement pathogène. Dans un tel contexte, Monsieur le Président, réduire le niveau de protection CITES à un moment où la surveillance et l'application de la loi sont encore insuffisantes dans plusieurs pays de l'ère de répartition nous paraît contraire à l'esprit des mesures de précaution. Pour des États à ressources limitées, l'annexe 1 offrirait un signal plus clair. Le commerce international doit rester exceptionnel et les tentatives de blanchissement sont plus facilement détectables. Passer en annexe 2, même après l'obligation des ACNP, risque, Monsieur le Président, d'augmenter le flux de commerce licite et illicite dépassant nos capacités de contrôle. À cet effet, le Congo estime que les critères de transfert ne sont pas réunis pour l'ensemble de l'aire de répartition et appelle à la conférence des parties de rejeter la proposition 17 et à maintenir le falcon pèlerin en annexe 1. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Congo. I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand is probably one of the few non-range states for this species, and so we're able to take a fairly independent view of the situation. We feel that the recovery of the peregrine has been spectacular and probably reached its peak at about 2021 when the last IUCN Red List was done. However, we're concerned that the impacts of HPAI have been quite significant on the species, certainly in North America, mainly coastal populations, but some of the populations around the Great Lakes as well, so across the continent. And so we're also concerned that, as various parties have mentioned, that some of the subspecies are not in the same sort of good state that the North American population has been in. And for example, there's an assessment for the Arabian Peninsula that the species is endangered. And so we wonder whether the proponents would consider an Appendix 2 listing with an annotation for a zero export quota for wild-caught specimens, whether they'd be open to have that as an alternative to not being supported at all. Over.
Thank you, New Zealand. I have Singapore.
Thank you, Chair. Singapore supports the proposal.
Thank you. And South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa supports this proposal. The species no longer meets the biological or trade criteria for inclusion in Appendix 1. Precautionary safeguards for the transfer to Appendix 2 are in place. The transfer of the falcon to Appendix 2 of CITES would represent a very significant conservation success. The numbers of this species have been restored, and in South Africa, the species is considered regionally as least concern. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And as a last speaker, I would take Uzbekistan.
Председатель, Узбекистан поддерживает предложение Канады о переводе Сапсана с первого приложения во второе. Спасибо.
Thank you. So I think we clearly have a division in the room, many parties in favor, but also many against the proposal. So I would like to go back to Canada, maybe, and ask what they take out of this discussion. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, like you, Chair, I take that there is not consensus in the room. There's a couple of points that I think I would like to address and seek some views before proposing an option. First of all, we heard a number of concerns, and we had heard this in preparation as well, regarding the data and the sources of information that resulted in the current assessment of the global species. I'm reminded that we are making a decision on global trade. So I would welcome, Chair, if you would indulge me, the opportunity to invite the experts who prepared that assessment. I think it's BirdLife, if they wouldn't mind intervening and providing us with that perspective on the data. Regarding concerns on illegal trade, I think I heard one proponent suggest that the precautionary measures required 100% certainty on the lack of illegal trade. I think that would be a difficult bar for any species, particularly a global species. And so again, we would focus attention on the levels of trade currently, which are around 1,500 live animals per year. The fact that the captive breeding operations that exist fill that demand quite successfully. And again, our interest here is less in starting any wild trade, but rather on recognizing the appropriate place for the listing of this species. Regarding some of the other issues mentioned, including traceability, we are reminded that we are not asking to remove this species from CITES. We are asking to place this species on CITES Appendix 2. CITES Appendix 2 has very strong controls, including permitting prior to any export or re-export of species. We have confidence in CITES Appendix 2 and the controls that it provides and the tool that it provides to parties, along with their own national measures and to ensure the protections of local populations. We are reminded that CITES is a global convention that is meant to be examining the trade at that global level. And when you consider it, we feel that the transfer to Appendix 2 is still justified. We note the comment by New Zealand about a potential to annotate our proposal to request a zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes. If that would help bring consensus and comfort to parties, I think we could accept that amendment. Again, as I understand it, in accordance to the guidance provided in 22, it would be an amendment along the lines of a zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes. So we would be interested if that would help bring some consensus or agreement. And as I mentioned at the start, Chair, I would be very interested in first hearing the views of the data experts, BirdLife, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I would like, in that case, give the floor to BirdLife International. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We have been listening carefully to the conversation in the room and acknowledge the complexity in this discussion. We take this opportunity to clarify a few points, particularly with regard to the IUCN Red List, given our role as the Red List Authority for birds. Our Red List assessment of peregrine falcon as least concern was published, as noted by many parties, in 2021. It is an assessment of the species' global risk of extinction, using the best data available at the time. Although additional data have become available since 2021, including preliminary data emerging from reporting by EU member states under Article 12 of the Birds Directive, we still see no evidence that peregrine falcon is close to meeting the quantitative thresholds for listing as globally threatened on the IUCN Red List. Whilst BirdLife classifies some of the population metric data of peregrine falcon as poor quality, we maintain high confidence in our assessment of the species as globally least concern. Concerns raised about potentially threatened subspecies or populations can and should be addressed by regional or national red lists. Nonetheless, we acknowledge several of the concerns raised during this discussion, as well as by the wider conservation community, and note continued evidence of challenges related to the conservation of the species in the wild. The current global red list status of the peregrine falcon as least concern is a conservation success story, but it will require continued conservation efforts to remain so into the future. I quickly reiterate BirdLife International's position on this proposal, that if parties are to adopt this proposal, we believe they should only do so with a zero export quota for wild-taken specimens, as just suggested by New Zealand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, BirdLife International. We have heard that there would be that Canada would like to hear from the room whether if the proposal would be amended to include a zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes, if the room would be in agreement with that amendment and could then support the proposal. So I'm asking parties who have been speaking clearly against that proposal to consider that question and maybe voice their views on such a proposal.
Somebody raising.
I see Djibouti.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Nous prenons note des amendements de la Nouvelle-Zélande il nous sera difficile d'accepter parce que au niveau de nos pays, le suivi sera très compliqué et nous maintenons nos propositions de s'opposer à cette proposition. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Djibouti, Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, Pakistan is not in a position to accept this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. Like Djibouti and Pakistan, the EU is not in a position to support the downlisting with a zero quota annotation. Thank you.
Okay, so I now go back to Canada again. Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, and I'm looking a little bit to my co-proponents to see. Chair, would you give me 4 seconds to go talk to my co-proponent? I would like us to take a joint suggestion, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, in that case, I would open the floor for observers. I see Born Free Foundation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm making this intervention on behalf of 15 observer organisations. We strongly urge parties to reject this proposal. While the recovery of the species across parts of its range is of course very welcome, peregrine falcons and their chicks and eggs continue to be in high demand for falconry and for racing and are subject to organised poaching and smuggling in a number of countries and regions. An Appendix 2 listing would risk increasing demand for wild peregrines, which would adversely impact smaller subpopulations, many of which are poorly understood. A letter from scientists to the journal Animal Conservation published in recent days highlights that the case for downlisting leans heavily on information from a few relatively well-studied populations in Europe and North America and ignores the vast data gaps from other regions. As highlighted by the European Union, the peregrine status is unknown for 63% of all countries and territories evaluated, and data gaps persist for at least 11 of the 19 currently recognised subspecies. We also note that the Technical Advisory Group of the CMS Raptors MOU recently issued a statement strongly advising against a general downlisting on the basis of insufficient global monitoring data, the potential increase in illegal trade, and risks to some populations of the species from highly pathogenic avian influenza. The proposal to downlist the species to Appendix 2 does not meet the criteria for downlisting in Annex 4 of ResConf 9.24, since the precautionary safeguards detailed in paragraph 2 are not met. Opening trade for wild-caught specimens at this time could seriously threaten the conservation gains that have been achieved for this species. The species should therefore be retained on Appendix 1 until these concerns have been addressed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and I will come back to Iran. Don't worry, I forgot about that. I will come back to you in just a second. I will take a second observer, which is Conservation Force.
Thank you, Chair. 45 years ago, Chair, as a young student, I was monitoring peregrine falcons in Italy as part of a large national monitoring system. At the time, we had about 150 pairs nesting in the country. Nowadays, we have in excess of 1,000 pairs with many urban populations, and peregrine falcons is also displacing the very rare lander falcon for many cliffs. Most of the best cliffs available are now occupied by peregrine falcons. This is to say that this proposal, Chair, is a test for this convention. After 50 years, it's clear that the species is not meeting the biological criteria, that the parties which have stricter domestic measures like the European Union, my fellow colleagues from the European Union, have all the possibilities to trace any trade in wild-caught birds, like we are continuing to do. And so these concerns are really not giving justice to the work of this convention. It's very important that parties recognize this as a conservation success and support fully the proposal of Canada. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Conservation Force. Now I give the floor to Iran. Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finally, we have the chance to talk about the proposal. We would like to thank the proponent countries, but we must firmly state our opposition to the transferring of the falcon peregrines from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2. Nowadays, maybe the most important threat to the peregrine falcon is illegal harvest and trade, a challenging situation that targets all life stages of the species, mainly juvenile migratory specimen. Due to high international and regional demand, hundreds of the falcons are caught illegally each year and sold to the dealers with destination to main illegal markets in the Middle East countries. This challenge is most countries not only harm. This challenge in the most of the countries not only harms the species and the related populations, but also has dramatic effects on enforcement staff, sometimes leading to serious injuries and deaths. This situation for Appendix 1 species is against all CITES rules and aims. How is that possible that an Appendix 1 species to be in such an internationally illegal trade without any seizure, reports, concerns, and control? What does it mean exactly when you see in the identification ID or passport of Appendix 1 species that its origin is the wild, transferring from one country to the another countries? Relying on the scientific points and the facts, the letter published by Zoological Society of London stating peregrine falcon population under threat again, and official position of the CMS Raptures MOU Technical Advisory Group expressing their deep concerns defines everything clearly about the conservation status of the peregrine falcon. So please don't let peregrine falcon to be faced with such a devastating uncertainty by downlisting. Downlisting the species indeed would increase the pressure on wild population, making the situation much worse. Proper scientific information on population size and illegal trade lacks for Asian region in the proposal and IUCN assessments. The region is supposed to be one of the main migratory pathways and also breeding areas. Without prior precautionary conservation measures, downlisting would put the regional population of the species in a more challenging situation. Moreover, general anticipation and opinion would be that by listing in Appendix 2, the trade of the species would be limitless, imposing plenty of enforcement, educational, and awareness measures. Listing Falco peregrinus in Appendix 2 could lead to increased legal and illegal breeding for the commercial purposes, which may dilute its genetic pool. Additionally, increasing interaction between wild population and captive bird individuals might result in hybridization, compromising the genetic integrity of the wild population. Maintaining the species under Appendix 1 ensures stricter protection, allowing effective monitoring.
Iran, can you please conclude?
It's my last paragraph. Before putting the species in such a challenging situation, especially with lack of scientific information on regional population size and trends, as well as the critical threats, it needs for intense precautionary measures and cooperation of range states to make all aspects of as clear as possible, focusing on international illegal trade control. It is really shocking that how CITES word ignores...
Iran, can you please conclude
it's my
now?
last sentence. It is my last sentence. Thank you, Mr. Chair. CITES, it is really shocking that how CITES word ignores the complicated and complex illegal market for this species. So we again state our opposition with the proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iran. I think we have heard enough parties speaking against and in favor, so I would now go back to Canada, what you have discussed with your co-proponents. So what do you propose as a way forward?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for giving me those few minutes. I apologize for taking that time. After discussion with our co-proponent, the United States, Canada would amend the proposal to include the annotation of a zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes. And we would like a vote.
Yeah. So you're asking to go for a vote on that amended proposal. Okay. So I think that is the conclusion of this debate. So we will go for a vote. I see Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to ask for a secret ballot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we have a request that this is going to be by secret ballot. Now I open the floor for parties to indicate whether they are in favor of such a secret ballot by pressing the button. Okay, we have enough. We have Lebanon, Bahrain, UAE, Tunisia, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Congo, Qatar, Oman, Iceland, Kuwait, the Syrian Arab Republic, Honduras, Nigeria, Malaysia, Central African Republic, and the Russian Federation. So, this is a vote on COP Prop 17 on Falco peregrinus to transfer the species from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2 with an annotation to say zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes. So if you vote yes, you are in favor of this amended proposal. If you vote no, you are against it. So the voting type will be a secret ballot. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. Since this is a vote on the proposal for amendment of the appendices, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. So technicians are ready. Parties, you have now 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Can you please display the results on the screen? So with 61, please wait. So with 61 votes in favor, 74 against, and 7 abstentions, COP20 Proposal 17 on Falco peregrinus to transfer the species from Appendix 1 to Appendix 2 with a zero export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes is rejected. We now turn our attention to Proposal COP20 Prop 18 on Sporophylla maximiliani, the great-billed seedfinch, and 5 other species of Sporophylla seedfinches. It's to include Sporophylla maximiliani in Appendix 1 and include the other 5 species in Appendix 2. This proposal has been submitted by Brazil, so Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Sporophylla maximiliani is a songbird on the brink. Once a familiar voice, it is now critically endangered in Brazil and endangered globally. Recent estimates suggest that fewer than 1,000 mature individuals survive worldwide, and perhaps fewer than 100 remain in Brazil, scattered across tiny, fragile subpopulations. Its decline is driven by overwhelmingly by a single cause: relentless illegal capture for pet trade and singing competitions, which continue to strip the wild of its last birds. Despite Brazil's strict prohibition on capturing wild specimens, birds keep appearing abroad. Clear evidence that illegal international trafficking persists. Many of these individuals are likely the descendants of the birds taken from the wild years ago, now bred in captivity to fuel a lucrative global demand. Sporophila maximiliani has become the 27th most frequently sized bird species in Brazil, a ranking driven not by low demand, but by how rare it has already become. This insatiable desire and never-ending demand for wild-caught birds undermines every attempt to restore the species to its natural habitat. Recognizing the urgency, a recent study by the CITES Secretary identified priority species most in need of coordinated conservation action, and Sporophila maximiliani is one of just 22 species highlighted. As stated in the Secretary assessment, this species clearly meets all the 3 criteria for inclusion in CITES Appendix 1. It is threatened with extinction, it is subject to trade, and that trade is having a demonstrably detrimental impact to the species. To ensure that protections are enforceable, this proposal also recommends listing Sporophila angolensis, Sporophila atrivosicis, female, Sporophila cratiosis, Sporophila funera, and Sporophila nutingi in Appendix 2 under the look-alike criterion. Females and juveniles of these species are notoriously difficult to distinguish from Sporophila maximiliani, especially for non-experts, and several already appears in international trade. Including them is essential to prevent laundering and misidentification. For all these reasons, Brazil urges parties to support this proposal and to join in safeguarding one of the most threatened songbirds. Effective cooperation today is the only way to ensure that the voice of Sporophila maximiliani continues to be heard in the wild, rather than become a silence we can never undo. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. I open the floor to parties. I have the United States.
Chair, in the spirit of transparency on the previous proposal, the United States voted yes, and the United States also takes this opportunity to support the inclusion of Sporophila maximiliani in Appendix 1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. I keep forgetting that one on transparency. So please, technicians, can you clean the screen? And then I will ask parties who wanted to make such a declaration on how they voted to take the floor. It's UK.
Thank you, Chair. And for the interests of transparency, we supported the proposal to downlist the species. Thank you.
Lebanon.
Dans un souci de transparence, le Liban a voté en faveur.
European Union.
Thank you, Chair. In the interest of transparency, the European Union and its member states voted no to the proposal.
Thank you. And Mexico.
Gracias, señor presidente. Nuestra delegación votó a favor de la propuesta enmendada. Gracias.
Thank you. So that is clear now. Now we can, Armenia.
Thank you, Chair. In the spirit of transparency, Armenia voted no.
Any other party wanting to make such a declaration? Then I would turn back to the proposal 2018 as introduced by Brazil and I think supported by the United States. I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We consider that Sporophila maximiliani meets the criteria in Appendix 1 listing. Its wild population is estimated at fewer thousand individuals in small fragmented subpopulations, with extensive illegal capture having caused local explorations across its range. Although large numbers are held in registered captive breeding operations in Brazil, and we note commercial trade in captive bred birds would be allowed through CITES registration, there is clear evidence that illegal capture and trade of wild bird continues. Therefore, we would like to support this, including the look-alike criteria, as we believe that is also justified. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. Honduras.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Honduras apoya la propuesta 18 sobre la inclusión de esta especie de ave granívora en los apéndices de la cita. En Centroamérica, la especie Sporophylla maximiliani es bastante rara y enfrenta una situación crítica por pérdida de hábitat, a pesar que no hay comercio sobre ella. Debo recalcar que el oriente de Honduras es el sitio de distribución más norteño de esta especie y es extremadamente rara. Se registró en Honduras apenas hace unos 2 o 3 años. Regular el comercio internacional de esta especie es esencial para frenar la presión y proteger las poblaciones silvestres tan fragmentadas. Honduras pide a las partes respaldar esta medida para garantizar la conservación de esta especie. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Honduras. European Union.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We thank Brazil for preparing this proposal. According to our assessment, the species meet the listing criterion to be listed in Appendix 1 and 2, as respectively proposed. Sporophylla maximiliani seems to meet the criteria to be included in Appendix 1 due to its restricted range, small and declining population size, and due to the small size of each subpopulations. The main threat to this species is exploitation for the pet trade that warrant the CITES listing. The lookalike criterion seems to be met for the other 5 species for inclusion in Appendix 2, although it should be noted that this could be valid also for other Sporophylla species, especially in case of females and juveniles. As this might lead to false declaration and enforcement difficulties, we therefore encourage range states to consider listing of other potential lookalike species in the genus in Appendix 3 until the next COPs, where more of the species could be listed if found necessary. Chair, with these considerations, we support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Suriname.
Thank you, Chair. And we thank Brazil for the proposal. As a range stage for 3 of the listed species, Suriname supports this proposal.
Thank you. China.
Thank you, Chair. China supports this proposal to list these sunbirds into appendices, given this species meet the criteria for listing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Uruguay.
Gracias, señor presidente. Uruguay, en nombre de 12 países de la región de América Central, del Sur y el Caribe, Argentina, Belice, Bolivia, Chile, Costa Rica, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panamá y República Dominicana, expresa su apoyo a la propuesta número 18, que busca la inclusión de Sporophylla maximiliani en el apéndice 1 de CITES y otras 5 especies del género de Sporophylla en el apéndice 2. Consideramos que la información presentada es robusta y demuestra el nivel de amenaza que enfrentan estas especies. Existen registros de extinciones de poblaciones debido al comercio de aves cantoras y algunas especies del género de Sporophylla no están ajenas a esto. Sporophylla maximiliani se encuentra en estado crítico de conservación, por lo que su inclusión en el apéndice 1 es de suma importancia para evitar que el comercio internacional continúe siendo una amenaza para esta especie. Las otras 5 especies de esporofillas, si bien pueden no estar altamente amenazadas, en algunos casos presentan disminuciones poblacionales y todas sufren presión de cazas con fines ornamentales por su canto. Esto, sumado a la dificultad que existe en diferenciar hembras y juveniles entre las especies de esporofila, e incluso en ocasiones se requiere de expertos para poder diferenciar entre machos de las diferentes especies, hace que sea de gran necesidad la inclusión de todas las especies sugeridas en esta propuesta. En nombre de los países arriba mencionados, invitamos a todas las partes a apoyar estas propuestas, fortaleciendo nuestro compromiso con la conservación y el uso responsable de la biodiversidad. Gracias, presidente.
Thank you, Uruguay. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe supports the proposal 18, and aligns with other parties to list the species in Appendix 1 as presented by Brazil as the species meets the listing criteria. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Burkina Faso.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. Le Burkina Faso, au regard des données robustes données par le Brésil, soutient cette proposition. Merci.
Thank you. Comoros.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Les Comores appuient la proposition du Brésil. Merci.
Thank you. Mali.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Mali félicite le Brésil et soutient cette proposition d'inscrire le Sporophylla maximilla à l'annexe 1 et les 5 autres à l'annexe 2. Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I see broad support so far for this proposal, so I will allow 5 more speakers. I have Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Malaysia supports the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Zambia supports the Brazilian proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand supports this proposal. It's one of the species groups that was identified at the CITES Songbirds workshop held in Bangkok in 2023. And we agree that the other species do meet the lookalike criteria, even if they don't meet the sound-alike criteria.
Thank you very much. Singapore.
Thank you, Chair. We support this proposal.
Thank you. And last speaker, Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia, como país de distribución de varias de las especies de esporofila y especies de aves canoras, entiende la problemática y apoya la propuesta de enmienda presentada por Brasil y resalta la importancia de la implementación desde la generación de información y trazabilidad. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. Now I open the floor for observers. I have SSN.
Gracias, señor presidente. SSN quiere felicitar a Brasil por presentar esta propuesta. Es un ejemplo muy claro del comercio internacional, cómo afecta y cómo ha hecho disminuir las poblaciones silvestres, con una gran presión específicamente sobre los ejemplares machos de estas especies. Los felicitamos, es un claro ejemplo además del apoyo regional completo de todos los países del área de distribución, de manera que invitamos al resto de los países partes de CITES a que apoyen esta propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. And I have now the last one is Parrot Breeders Association South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. Proposal 18 should not proceed as drafted. We urge Brazil to amend their proposal to include all Sporophylla species, including Sporophylla maximilla, to the listed Appendix 2 with a 0 export quota for wild-caught specimens. Appendix 2 status provides regulatory trade, monitoring and a control framework for these species. Appendix 1, on the other hand, triggers a collapse of legal captive supply, which will push demand straight to the wild. A critical fact in paragraph 8.4 cannot be ignored. There are 37,000 registered breeders holding more than 200,000 captive birds. This means annual demand is over 200,000. That demand is thus 100 times larger than the entire wild population in South America and 1,000 times larger than Brazil's wild population. For every single Sporophylla maximilla flying in the Brazilian grasslands, there are 1,000 captive bred birds sold each year. Any disruption in captive breed supply will immediately shift demand to the wild populations. We have seen this pattern before. After the African grey uplisting, captive bred supply collapsed more than tenfold. During the long registration period under the resolution 12.10, this vacuum in supply was eagerly taken up by poachers of wild-caught specimens, placing an extraordinary demand on the wild population, a demand that can wipe out the remaining population. Appendix 1 listing does not stop trafficking. Appendix 1 does not stop trafficking. It stops legal captive breeding supply, a practice which directly reduces demand on the wild populations. With Sporophylla maximilla, the wild population is too small to survive such a shock. Poachers know where the remaining pockets are. If Appendix 1 holds captive supply, even briefly, the species could disappear from the wild before the 90-day implementation period ends. Resolution 9.24 requires proportionate measures and
and advises against listing species that are traded almost entirely as captive bred. The proposal gives no clarity on how 37,000 breeders or the 200,000 captive birds will be treated or how continuous supply will be maintained.
Can you please conclude?
Thank you, sir. Appendix 2, with the zero quota, gives us the tools we need. Appendix 1 gives us a predictable collapse and a predictable conservation disaster. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have Mexico asking for the floor. Was it?
Gracias, señor presidente. Solo para indicar que México apoya la propuesta. Gracias.
Okay. So we have large agreement in the room. Parties are in favor of this proposal. So my conclusion is that proposal CoP20, Prop 18, to include Sporophila maximiliani in Appendix 1 and to include Sporophila angolensis, Atriorostris, Crassirostris, Funerea, and Nutengi in Appendix 2 was accepted by consensus. We now move to reptiles. So it's CoP20 Prop 19 on the Caribicus vareni, the Hispaniolan giant galliwasp. It's to include the species in Appendix 1. The proponent is the Dominican Republic. So Dominican Republic, you have the floor to introduce that proposal.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. La República Dominicana propone a la lucia gigante de la Hispaniola, o ya en galliwasp Caribicus warrenis, anteriormente Celestus warreni, para ser incluido en el apéndice 1. Esta especie tiene una distribución en República Dominicana y Haití, una población vulnerable declarada en el 2015 y en peligro crítico en la lista roja nacional de la República Dominicana. Solo se conoce una localidad y se considera muy rara. Digamos que en el territorio vecino de Haití no tenemos reportes desde hace tiempo y es incierta cuál es la situación en el vecino país. Las amenazas, pérdidas y fragmentación del hábitat, comercio ilegal, con exportaciones, digamos, ilegales hasta cierto punto, que República Dominicana nunca ha autorizado un permiso para la exportación de esta especie. Vuelvo y repito, una especie rara que nosotros como biólogos la vimos por primera vez en el 2013. Solamente la conocíamos por la literatura, ¿verdad? Digamos que el comercio internacional puede estar afectando a esta especie porque se comercializa en Alemania, en Estados Unidos, etcétera, y alcanzando precios realmente significativos. Por ejemplo, en Estados Unidos puede alcanzar un ejemplar hasta $450 y para promover la especie en el comercio dicen precisamente que una especie es muy rara y que usted tiene que comprarla porque va a desaparecer, porque se va a extinguir. Contamos con una población de unos 66 individuos gracias a que están en una área protegida, la cual en estos momentos está bajo un programa de monitoreo continuo, anual, y de vigilancia y protección para garantizar la conservación de estas especies. Entendemos que la inclusión en el apéndice 1 nos puede garantizar la conservación de esa población silvestre, evitando extracción para su colocación en el mercado internacional de mascotas. Entendemos que cumple con los criterios para el apéndice 1, de acuerdo a la resolución 9.24 RB COP17, anexo 1, criterios AI, II, el BI y el IB, o sea, el 4. La población silvestre es pequeña y disminuye el área de distribución restringida a varias subpoblaciones y pérdida y destrucción de la superficie de la calidad del hábitat. Entendemos que la especie, por la, digamos, el grado de amenaza en que se encuentra, una población prácticamente restringida o relicto, muy pequeña, su colocación en el apéndice 1 nos ayudaría a conservar la especie en su medio natural. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Dominican Republic. I now open the floor to parties. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We highly appreciate the efforts of the Dominican Republic to protect its native wildlife, including Caribicus wareni. We agree that the biological criteria for Appendix 1 are met for the species. While we just heard no exports from the Dominican Republic were permitted, we note that exports from Haiti took place in the past and are aware of the presence of, to date, captive-born ex-situ populations in third countries, including numerous zoos, while we are not aware of any significant trade in wild specimens in the recent past. We understand that the Dominican Republic intends to prevent trade in specimens that were or are descendants of specimens that have been exported in the past, which would, however, be deemed pre-convention according to CITES rules. From a conservation perspective, most concerning to us is that the genus contains 3 species, all of which are endemic to Hispaniola, while the 2 species that were not proposed for listing appear to be more threatened than Caribicus wareni. Listing of only Caribicus wareni in Appendix 1 and leaving Caribicus anelpistus and Caribicus darlingtonia entirely unprotected, which are further similar in appearance, may increase the risk of, firstly, pressure on the unprotected and likely more threatened species, and secondly, Caribicus wareni being falsely traded under the name of the unprotected species. Considering potential enforcement challenges and to prevent that listing may have an unintended harmful effect on other species, we believe that the most adequate way to enhance protection of this genus would be as a first step to list Caribicus wareni in Appendix 2 with a 0 export quota for wild specimens traded for commercial purposes. However, after exchange with the Dominican Republic, we can still support the proposal as it stands, acknowledging the ongoing research and monitoring on the ground. That said, we highly encourage Dominican Republic to list Caribicus anelpistus and Caribicus darlingtonia in Appendix 3. So by that, a monitoring of trade of all 3 species could be achieved to assess whether the uplisting is needed and ID guidance could be developed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, European Union. And now I have Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe supports CoP20 Proposal 19 to include the species in Appendix 1 as submitted by the Dominican Republic on the basis that the species satisfies all established listing criteria. Thank you.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I have Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan appreciates the Dominican Republic for its commitment to conserve this species. The main threat to this species are reported to as habitat loss, agricultural expansion, illegal collection, killing due to misconceptions, and habitat disturbance caused by invasive alien species. And the impact of international trade on the population of this species is unclear. According to the analysis by IUCN Traffic, it is also uncertain whether specimens exported originate from wild populations or from captive bred stocks. While recognizing potential benefit of regulating international trade in this species, Appendix 2 listing may be more appropriate at this stage, as Appendix 2 listing would allow to monitor and control international trade by examining whether specimens are from captive breeding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Japan. UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports this proposal for the Appendix 1 listing. The species has restricted area of distribution, a small population with fragmented subpopulations, and a high vulnerability to intrinsic factors, so criteria A and B are met. While population estimates are lacking, available data indicate that any wild collection could have a significant impact on this species, and we consider that a precautionary approach is appropriate to prevent further decline. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK. I now have Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. La región de América Central, del Sur y el Caribe aquí presente apoya la propuesta de República Dominicana. Consideramos que su inclusión en el apéndice 1 va a ser una herramienta muy importante para conocer el comercio ilegal para esta especie. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. I have Honduras.
Gracias, señor presidente. Solo para indicar que Honduras también apoya la propuesta de República Dominicana. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. St. Lucia.
Thank you, Chair. St. Lucia would like to support this proposal, and we also would like to recommend the observations that were made by the EU. We would like to recommend that they be upheld as well. Thank you.
Thank you, St. Lucia. The Russian Federation.
Thank you very much, Chair. We support the proposal for including of Caribicus vareni in Appendix 1, but I would like to ask some comments from the European community for 2 other species of the genus. Do they have any papers dealing with the monitoring of these 2 other species in Hispaniola Island? And what would be the proposals for them on which appendix they could be included according to the European community? Thank you.
Thank you, Russia. Just to be clear, this is not a proposal to what the EU said is not to include them now, but to encourage the Dominican Republic to do so in the future, or first put them in Appendix 3, and then, depending on what I find, then for the next COP in 3 or 4 years, to make official proposals. Just to be clear on that. Okay. I now have Uruguay.
Gracias, señor presidente. Uruguay apoya esta propuesta. Gracias.
Uganda.
Thank you, Chair. Uganda is in support of this proposal to get this species included in Appendix 1, and we commend the effort by the Dominican Republic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. Having no other parties asking for the floor, I would open the floor to SSN.
Muchas gracias, presidente. SSN quiere felicitar a República Dominicana por presentar esta propuesta. Ciertamente estamos hablando de una especie en altísimo peligro y que está sujeta a presiones de extracción para abastecer aún más el mercado de mascotas en Europa y en Estados Unidos. Este es un ejemplo más de una especie endémica que es objeto de extracciones ilegales. Invitamos a los países del área países parte de las CITES que apoyen esta propuesta, y también apoyamos la iniciativa que propone la Unión Europea para que las otras 2 especies entren al apéndice 3 y se hagan los estudios y se reúnan las condiciones para presentar en la próxima COP la inclusión de las otras 2 especies en apéndice 1. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Thank you very much. And last speaker is U.S. Association of Reptile Keepers. Please be slow.
I'll try my best, Chair. Thank you, Chair. The U.S. Association of Reptile Keepers, supported by several other organizations whose names will be provided, intervenes on this proposal to provide additional factual information for the record. This species occurs principally on the Haitian side of Hispaniola. Of its 2 range states, only the Dominican Republic is a CITES party. Haiti is a non-party and has not been consulted on this proposal, which we consider improper. We are deeply concerned about the claim that the species has never been legally traded. There is ample record that the species has been legally exported from Haiti, and those exports have resulted in the establishment of captive breeding operations in the US, UK, and Europe. Notably, the successful captive breeding of all reptiles has advanced at a dramatic rate in the last 2 decades. This is true for Caribis warreni. There is no doubt that this species is being legally captive bred. The proposal itself concedes that legal trade in this species has occurred from Haiti, and we should also note that the species is managed under an AZA stud book with a breeding program at the Nashville Zoo, founded from 19 specimens legally collected from Haiti in July of 2000. We are also aware of a number of legally acquired specimens from Haiti commercially entering the United States in the past and founding small private captive breeding colonies. This species, while fascinating, is not in high demand. The prices quoted by the proponent are quite low for the US reptile market, demonstrating it is only in demand for the most dedicated hobbyists and specialists and should not be a species of any particularized concern. Also, as the leading reptile keeping organization in the United States, we must emphasize that the ban for reptiles in the US is overwhelmingly for captive bred animals. If captive bred breeding facilities for this species are later proposed for registration, any objection based on the claim that the Dominican Republic has never exported them commercially should be rejected or subjected to strict scrutiny. We think the conservation outcomes sought by the Dominican Republic would be better achieved through an Appendix 2 listing with a 0 quota from wild specimens taken from the Dominican Republic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So we have heard large support, almost unanimous. So I only have had yes, before I conclude, I will ask Dominican Republic to take the floor. There have been several suggestions made, and you may want to react on those.
Gracias, señor presidente. Solo queremos acotar lo siguiente. De hecho, es correcto que hay algunos reportes de exportaciones desde Haití, pero paradójicamente, cuando revisamos la literatura, vemos que son exportados de Haití, pero la localidad corresponde a República Dominicana. Por ejemplo, Buen Hombre, hay reportes en la literatura de que esos especímenes fueron exportados desde Haití, y cuando vamos a la localidad donde fueron colectados, corresponde al territorio dominicano. Realmente desconocemos cuál es la situación de acuerdo a los herpetólogos dominicanos que van y trabajan en Haití, etcétera. Desconocemos cuál es la situación real de la especie en Haití, dada la situación que presentan ellos allá con pérdida de hábitat, fragmentación de hábitat y la situación actual en la que CITES en la que Haití no es parte de las CITES. Por lo que nosotros tenemos que establecer las salvaguardas necesarias en el territorio dominicano para esta especie, incluso para poder garantizar poder recuperar la población en el territorio haitiano en el caso de que sea necesario. Otra situación que entendemos es que no sabemos exactamente si se hacen los estudios genéticos, si ambas especies son la misma especie, dado a la separación geográfica en que se encuentran la distribución de ambas especies. Muchas gracias. Entonces, nosotros mantenemos la posición de la inclusión en el apéndice 1, tal como hicimos la propuesta original. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. So now I can conclude we have many parties in support of the proposal, only one party not agreeing, and I would like to go back to Japan to ask if they maintain their opposition. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we have no intention to block this consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, Japan. So my conclusion is that proposal CoP20, Prop 19, to include Carabicus varani in Appendix 1 was accepted by consensus. We now turn our attention to Proposal 20. It's CoP20, Prop 20 on Philurus amnicola, the Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko. It's a proposal to include the species in Appendix 2, and it has been submitted by Australia. So, Australia, you have the floor to introduce that proposal.
Thank you, Chair. Australia is pleased to present the proposal to include Philurus amnicola, commonly known as a Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko, in Appendix 2. The Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko is a moderately sized gecko endemic to the Mount Elliot National Park, located in the north of the Australian state of Queensland. The species was listed on Appendix 3 in 2022. It is listed as vulnerable under the Australian state of Queensland's legislation and near threatened on the IUCN Red List. Due to their cryptic nature, population size estimates for the Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko are difficult to determine. Past poaching has substantially reduced population density in one population. It is unknown if the population has since recovered, but recovery is likely to be slow. The entire known distribution of the species is highly restricted to only 4 discrete locations, with one population separated from the remaining 3 by a narrow gap of unsuitable habitat that significantly limits gene flow and dispersal capabilities of the species. Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko populations are also threatened by a number of other factors, including changes in land use, severe weather events caused by climate change, and population fragmentation due to limited connective pathways between locations. Domestically, the species is not permitted to be taken from the wild or held or bred in captivity. For more than 45 years, there has been no legal commercial export of this species from Australia and no non-commercial export since at least 2002. Despite this, the species is in the international pet trade due to their uniqueness and rarity. Australia has detected significant numbers of specimens of the species being internationally traded from 2008 to 2019. In addition, online trade surveillance identified 227 advertisements for the species in the international pet market between 2014 and 2023. The restricted distribution of the species, limited connective pathways and limited population threaten the long-term sustainability of the wild populations, and with a likely steady and ongoing decline of mature individuals. With the growing overseas demand for the species, a legal collection of individuals from the wild risks depleting populations to unsustainable levels. Given their vulnerability and increasing value in the pet trade, we are seeking additional protections for this endemic species to avoid it being eligible for inclusion in Appendix 1 in the near future. Australia submits the proposal for the committee's consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. I now open the floor to parties on this proposal. I see New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand supports this proposal. The problems faced by Australia with their endemic geckos being illegally collected from the wild and then being smuggled out of the country to satisfy the demands of the exotic pet trade parallel those that New Zealand has faced with our endemic green geckos of the genus Nautinus. The unique morphological characteristics of Philurus amnicola in having a flared and flattened leaf-like tail, combined with its natural rarity, makes them highly sought after in the international pet market. The proposal indicates that poaching has caused localised declines nearly to the point of local extinction. There's been no legal commercial trade of this species from Australia in the last 45 years, yet it is being openly traded in European and North American pet markets. Because the species is a very small geographical range with little connectivity between the 4 remaining populations, the species is especially vulnerable to being poached or being fried in bushfires.
Thank you, New Zealand. Now I have Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Nous soutenons l'Australie dans sa proposition d'inscrire les geckos, cette espèce endémique de l'Australie, à l'annexe 2.
Thank you. UK?
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports the inclusion of the leaf-tailed gecko in Appendix 2, given its highly restricted range, vulnerability to poaching, and appearance in international trade despite national protections. Thank you.
Thank you. Solomon Islands?
Thank you, Chair. Solomon Islands thank the proponent, Australia, for bringing in this proposal to list Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko into Appendix 2. We fully support this proposal as stated. Thank you.
Thank you. European Union?
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We appreciate the efforts of Australia to protect its endemic wildlife, including Philurus amnicola. We noted that exports from Australia took place in the past in violation of national law and are aware of the presence of pre-convention ex-situ population in the EU and North America. In our view, the listing of the species in Appendix 3 in 2022 was an appropriate step, as only limited trade activity in captive bred specimen has been recorded since the listing. Nevertheless, we recognize that the species is only known from 4 sites in Australia and assessed vulnerable under Queensland state legislation. Taking our responsibility for the conservation of species traded in the EU seriously, we support Australia's proposal to list Philurus amnicola in Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. I have Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Felicitamos a Australia por la presentación de esta propuesta. Argentina apoya la misma. Gracias.
Thank you. Brazil?
Thank you. We also support this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Canada?
Thank you, Chair, and Canada thanks Australia for bringing this proposal forward. We recognize the concerns that they have raised in the proposal, and so Canada also supports Australia's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Samoa?
Thank you, Chair. Samoa thanks Australia for the proposal and for the information provided. It is clear that the Phalaris amnicola has a very restricted range and already has been impacted by illegal collection, with one subpopulation almost lost from a single poaching event. Its rising value in trade is also increasing the risk of the wild population. Also supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I have United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports the proposal to include the Mount Elliot leaf-tailed gecko in Appendix 2 of CITES because we have determined that it meets both criteria A and B of Resolution COP 9.24. Annex 2A have been met based on best available scientific information. The United States recognizes that escalating demand and trade value in the international market were recorded for the gecko has been detected in commercial markets since at least 2008, with prices escalating from $10 to $85 US per animal to $1,500 to $2,400 US by 2017-2018, demonstrating unregulated trade poses a significant and growing threat to the population in the wild. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have a clear picture in the room, so I will allow 4 more parties to speak. I have South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa believes that the species meets the biological and trade criteria, and therefore we support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Fiji.
Thank you, Chair. Fiji notes with concern on the illegal trade that has been happening over the past years, and we fully support this proposal submitted by Australia for this species to be included in Appendix 2.
Thank you. Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea fully supports the proposal by Australia. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ecuador.
Gracias, señor presidente. Ecuador también apoya la propuesta presentada por Australia.
Okay, so now I open the floor for observers. I think we have a unanimous support for that proposal, so I open the floor to observers. I have Provide Life.
Thank you, Chair. This is a joint intervention by Pro-Wildlife, the Species Survival Network, and 14 more NGOs, of which we will provide the names to the Secretariat. Although no commercial exports of native wildlife from Australia are allowed, Philurus amnicola is regularly sold in the international pet trade. For instance, earlier this year, a commercial trader from Czechia offered large numbers of this endemic species, even noting their wild-caught origin. In Europe, the gecko is marketed for prices of up to €700 per pair due to its limited availability in the market and its striking appearance. It was classified by the IUCN Global Red List as near threatened, but this assessment has not been updated since the serious bushfires in 2020, and declines of wild populations are assumed. From our point of view, this species could even qualify for Appendix 1, but a CITES Appendix 2 listing would also support Australia's national efforts to protect its unique biodiversity and national treasures. Thank you.
So thank you. So I would conclude that proposal CoP20, Prop 20, to include Philurus amnicola in Appendix 2 was accepted by consensus. I would now like to go to CoP20, Prop 21 on the Philurus cautianulatus. It's the thin-tailed gecko. It's a proposal to include that species in Appendix 2, and it has also been submitted by Australia. So, Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Chair. Australia is also pleased to present the proposal to include Phalaris cautianulatus, commonly known as the ringed thin-tailed gecko, in Appendix 2. The ringed thin-tailed gecko is a moderately sized gecko endemic to the southeast region of the Australian state of Queensland and only found in 3 localities. The species was also listed on Appendix 3 in 2022. Impacts from a large-scale fire event in 2019 to 2020 led to the species being listed as endangered by both Australian national and Queensland state legislation. Population size estimates for the species are difficult to determine due to their cryptic nature. Their abundance has likely decreased with degradation of habitat in burnt areas. The geographical range for the ringed thin-tailed gecko is highly fragmented with only 3 discrete populations. Approximately 28% of the species' potential habitat was burnt during the 2019 to 20 bushfires, including many critical habitat features known to support higher densities of the species. With increased temperatures and drought prevalence, remaining populations continue to be threatened by fire. Further threats include invasive weed infestation and land clearing. Again, domestically, the species is not permitted to be taken from the wild or held or bred in captivity. For more than 45 years, there has been no legal commercial export of the species from Australia and no non-commercial export since at least 2002. Despite this, again, the species is in the international pet trade due to their uniqueness and rarity. Australia has detected significant numbers of the species being traded internationally from 2008 to 2018 at high commercial value, with up to €2,000 per specimen in some cases. Additionally, a number of specimens were found in advertisements from different online data sources, and as most recently as a few days ago, advertisements for further specimens have been discovered. Restrictions of the species to only 3 fragmented subpopulations and no connectivity between them, in addition to the ongoing threat from fire and loss of habitat and illegal take, means that any further take from the wild risks reducing the wild populations to unviable numbers. Recovery from the fire event has been slow, and their current population status is believed to be very small and fragmented. Given the vulnerability of wild populations and increasing value and demand in the pet trade, we are again seeking additional protections for this endemic species to avoid it being eligible for inclusion in Appendix 1 in the near future. Australia submits the proposal for the committee's consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. I now open the floor to parties. I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand supports this proposal. Although population size and trends of this largely nocturnal species are not well understood, New Zealand takes a precautionary approach when a party is asking CITES for greater protection of their endemic species, especially given that there has been no legal commercial trade of this species from Australia, yet it is being openly traded in European and North American pet markets. The species has a very small geographical range and little, if any, connectivity between the three remaining subpopulations. This very limited range makes them especially vulnerable to poaching, but also vulnerable to other catastrophic events such as bushfires. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Fiji.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fiji supports Australia's proposal to include this species in Appendix 2 of CITES. This species is very endemic to sensitive areas in Australia, so which requires very strengthened international protection to prevent it from getting declined and driven by increasing illegal trade. Fiji further underscores the growing concerns regarding the illegal trade of Oceania endemic species, including geckos and other iguanas, which continue to be trafficked internationally despite national protection. So this listing of the species in the Appendix 2 will contribute significantly to regional efforts to curb illegal harvesting and transboundary trafficking, reinforcing collective enforcement measures across Oceania and to ensure that endemic species unique to our region are safeguarded for future generations. We thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiji. Now we have the United States.
Thank you, Chair. As with the previous proposal, we support this gecko as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Considering the increased demand for the illegal trade of, especially on endemic reptiles, Iran supports the proposal too. Thank you.
Thank you. Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brazil fully supports this proposal.
Thank you. UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports listing the ring-tailed gecko in Appendix 2 due to its highly restricted range, fragmented subpopulations, and increasing threats from habitat degradation, bushfires, climate change, and the illegal collection for the international trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe supports CoP20 Proposal 21 to include the species ringed thin-tailed gecko in Appendix 2 as submitted and presented by Australia. Thank you.
Thank you. Papua New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea thank you, Chair. Papua New Guinea fully supports Australia's proposal, knowing that the species is endemic to Australia with very restricted distribution, small fragmented populations, and is increasingly affected by climate change impacts, several bushfires, and the growing illegal trade. The evidence provided clearly meets the criteria for Appendix 2 under Resolution Conference 9.24. PNG recognizes Australia's leadership in bringing this proposal forward and acknowledge the robust scientific justification provided. Chair, Papua New Guinea is pleased to support Proposal 21 and encourage parties to adopt this listing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Zambia supports the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Samoa.
Thank you, Chair. Samoa notes, although this species is already facing habitat loss and fire impacts, illegal trade has also been clearly detected with this species appearing in overseas markets despite no legal trade exports from Australia. This shows ongoing demand and the real risk of wild specimens being taken. Given the species' very limited distribution and small subpopulations, Samoa supports its inclusion in Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Solomon Islands.
Thank you, Chair. Solomon Islands supports Australia and thank Australia for bringing in this proposal to list in Appendix 2. Solomon Islands fully support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bolivia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Al ser una especie endémica, también damos nuestro apoyo a esta propuesta 21. Gracias.
Thank you very much. I close the list now. I have two more parties. Mexico.
Gracias, señor presidente. Apoyamos la propuesta.
And Lesotho.
Thank you, Chair. Lesotho supports Australia's proposal.
So thank you. We have unanimous support. I would open the floor for observers. Humane World for Animals, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of Humane World for Animals and 15 other observer organisations. The ringed thin-tail gecko is endemic to Australia and is not allowed to be exported outside of the country for commercial purposes. Nevertheless, this gecko species continues to appear in the international pet trade. This week alone, we have identified a Canadian seller openly offering this gecko online, with animals advertised in pairs for over 1,000 Canadian dollars. Their own description highlights long transit times, with many dying while awaiting paperwork. This gecko is restricted to 3 locations within a single state forest in Queensland, Australia, and was heavily impacted by the Black Summer bushfires in 2020, which destroyed 28% of its habitat. In 2017, it was classified as near threatened by the IUCN and endangered under national legislation in 2024. We strongly welcome Australia's proposal and call on the parties to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. So my conclusion is that proposal CoP20, Prop 21, to include Philurus caudianilatus the ringed thin-tailed gecko in Appendix 2 was accepted by consensus. Before closing this morning's session, I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat for some housekeeping announcements.
Thank you, Chair. In follow-up to the message passed on this morning, just to highlight to the delegates that the in-session document for the budget working group will be taken in Committee 2. It's document COP20, COM217, and it has now been published in the 3 languages. So if any delegates here are following the budget working group and the budget item, the COM doc is now available in the 3 languages on the CITES website. Thank you.
Thank you. So in the afternoon, we will first dealing with proposals 22 and 23, then with the summary record 11, and then conclude with COM docs 3, 4, and 5. So have a good lunch and see you in the afternoon.